Live.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you want me to
We're going to be taking limited questions at the end. All right, give me a countdown. Ready? Good afternoon. My name is Kamal Johnson. I'm the mayor of the City of Hudson. I want to thank everyone for viewing this press conference under such short notice. I've brought you here today for my latest executive order. This particular order is centered around police reform. I've had numerous phone calls, emails. I've attended protests across our county and as well as in Greene County. And this order is the first step to say that I hear you and I'm listening and our city will act. This order is not a solution, but the start of a conversation around police reform here in Hudson. This order is not a critique of our police department, but rather our city being proactive and not reactive. We can disagree about many things, but one thing that we should always be on the same side of is that's safety. This isn't about who's a good cop or who's a bad cop. This is about trust and safety. While I was campaigning, a lot of people, especially in communities of color and communities where there's poverty, they said they don't trust politicians. And I couldn't just say to them, I'm one of the good ones, trust me. No, that's something I have to do day in and day out while I'm in office to earn that trust. And I expect no different from our officers of the law. Despite body cameras, training, and videos from the public, people like George Floyd are still dying in broad daylight. The underlying problem of police brutality is not about individual police officers alone. It's about the problem with our society. The City of Hudson, like all other municipalities, is not immune to this problem. This problem is about systematic racism, discrimination, and implicit bias towards people of color, especially Black people. But the people of Hudson, like all people, possess universal human rights and are entitled to dignity, respect, and equal treatment under the law. I am committed to making sure that this happens. I recognize the danger and importance of the job, and I need to support a professional police department. I live in a neighborhood where just around the corner a young man was murdered, and that needs to stop as well. Things must change here in Hudson, and that change starts today. Among other reforms, my executive order calls for a 10% reduction in funding of the police force beginning now. No additional police officers will be hired until further notice. The police force will demilitarize. We will no longer accept vehicles of equipment formerly used for military purposes through the federal forfeiture program. And that includes vehicles and funds. Police officers will avoid using military equipment and military-style uniforms for non-essential purposes. I am creating a police reconciliation and advisory committee to be composed of police, city officials, residents to meet with me once a month on police matters. This commission will undertake a reconciliation process with the community and will report back their findings to me by November 15th of this year. Studies have shown that most training on bias and race don't work. So we aren't going to call for more training. Instead, we will have a community conversation 4 times a year between police and the community to foster trust and respect between the police and the community. One of those which will happen in several weeks. Our police already use body cameras, and I'm proud to say that just last week we received a grant for additional cameras. So now every officer on our police force will be wearing a body camera, and that footage is to be reviewed periodically, and I will ensure that that happens. I'm proud to say that our police have already banned the using of chokeholds and hog tying people. We also have in our policy a duty to intervene. So if any officer sees another officer using excessive force, verbal or physical, it is their duty to intervene, and we will ensure that that happens. Effective immediately, so-called no-knock warrants for drug searches and other police functions where they are not essential to protect public safety are prohibited. The Hudson Police Department will implement a Hudson Cares program to assist individuals with seeking treatment for substance use disorders based upon the highly successful program started by our Commissioner Volkmann. I'm going to call together the city judges, the district attorney, the Greenberger Center, the public defenders, the county officials, nonprofits, and directly impacted people to find ways to serve people who are homeless and in mental health crisis or live with substance use disorders. Because the police should not have to solve these problems, we need to take these issues off their plate so that they can focus on serious crimes. And finally, from now on a monthly basis, I'm going to get data back from the police on the number of use of force incidents, arrests and crimes alleged, emotionally and disturbed person calls, and calls involving a drug overdose or suspected drug overdose. This and others will be available in my new executive order on the city website. I'm going to be open for questions at this time unless our police chief or commissioner has anything that they would like to add.
You say defund the police department. What resources do you eliminate?
Well, we have the commissioner and the chief who have spent their time looking over the budget. So we're looking for an immediate 10% decrease of the police fund. And that's, to start. We have to build the resources as well to take things like mental health engagements away from the police officers. They're not social workers, so they're not always equipped to handle these situations.
What's the one thing you want people to understand about what you're doing?
The one thing I want people to understand is that, this is not something that the city of Hudson is immune to. And we need to be proactive and not reactive. So it's better to have things in place now than when something happens to scramble and try to make things happen.
What was the impetus of this? Just everything nationally?
When I was campaigning, one of the things I ran on was police reform. So this has always been, something I wanted to do. And everything that's happening nationwide, there's no better time than now.
So you said that most training on racial biases don't work, and then instead you're going to have 4 yearly conversations to foster trust with the community. What do you envision those conversations looking like?
I want them to be direct conversations where the officers are hearing from the community directly on how they feel and some of the issues around trust in our community. We've had numerous situations where there's been violence in our community and no one has come forward to police because of that lack of trust. And that's not just a Hudson thing. It's something that's nationwide, and we want to be able to, mend that here in Hudson.
Have some of these things already been implemented? Are they already in place?
We do have policy on certain things, yes, like the banning of hog ties, no chokeholds. But as we've seen nationwide, if we were not really hammering down those policies to let them know, we could have tragedies like we've seen.
So how many officers currently wear body cameras in the city of Hudson?
Every officer that's on patrol is equipped with one, so they share. So this latest grant will equip everyone with an individual one.
Where's the grant from?
Hudson. Well, it's we haven't received it yet, but we've applied to Hudson River Bank and Trust Company Foundation. Yes, and they did outfit us earlier too. That's right, for the original cameras.
From the commissioner, do you have any comments?
Yes.
Just hard to repeat.
Oh, okay, there we go. I think the mayor and the administration, what we want to do is create a bridge with the community and the police. But one thing's for sure, you could build the best bridge, but unless people cross over to the other side and see the other people's viewpoint, that bridge is just a monument of failure. So the mayor really wants to create that bridge so both the police and the community can cross and see each other's viewpoints and start that community conversation. One thing I've always said is community conversations leads to community solutions. Sometimes our conversations are difficult and uncomfortable. And if we need to have difficult and uncomfortable conversations in our community, this is the way we feel is the best way. It's just sit down and start that and create bridges that we actually cross over into each other's world.
I do have a question. The governor, of course, as we all know, has more or less mandated that every community rebuild, redesign, re-envision their police force, and suggested actually this morning that time was wasting and today was the day to begin. So I'm curious, you have done an executive order, but the community sort of planning that he's advocating to rebuild the police department, how is that coordinating with this?
Yeah, this was just the first step to start that conversation. Like we've all discussed, that it has to be a partnership with the community. So to get that conversation started and to get people talking, this is that first step. So we will be holding town halls and informational sessions with the community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Does the police chief have a comment?
Excuse me?
Do you have a comment on either the 10% reduction or anything?
Well, I support this initiative to the end that I think the public will get a greater opportunity to see what young, fine people we have in our department. So I think people, when we're in the process of this, will find out that they're very good, bright, and dedicated young officers.
Mm-hmm.
There's copies of the full order on the desk. Any further?
Just so I can keep track, I must, like the officers that you currently have on the police force, where do those officers live? Do they live here in Hudson or do they come from the greater region?
Many of them are under the old 15-mile residency requirement, which has been expanded to 25 miles. And I think all are within the 15-mile limit.
What kind of conversations have you been having with your officers as these protests continue?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's concerned. I think the open conversation and interaction is going to allay a lot of their fears and concerns because they've got a lot to be proud of. Their actions and how they comport themselves is something that can actually be recognized now. So we do look forward to that and joining in with the mayor's plan.
You said everyone's concerned. What are some of the concerns that have been brought up by officers?
Well, I mean, if you just watch television, you see violence, you see protests, how will we react? We're a small department. How will this affect us here in a small town? And we did have one protest that went off rather smoothly. So I think it's an indication that, we have a fine town and folks will get these ideas out in a reasonable and safe manner.
Who's going to be facilitating these conversations between police and the community?
Well, we're actually going to be implementing a reconciliation board, advisory board, so we would like those individuals from the community to facilitate these discussions. The early ones, myself and the commissioner, will facilitate. This is going to be new waters for our city, so it's going to take some patience, but together we're going to make, things happen here that should happen nationally.
Good soundbite, thank you.
Good, Randall?
We're good.
Any,
Are we off?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, man.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Can't shake hands.
Come on, can you electronically